Kazi, that's
Yeah.
why I was.
Well, when we invited Argo to live with us in August of 2010, about a month later, he said he planned to come home, and would we come with him? So we did. And so that was my first experience of seeing Homacho, and I was kind of overwhelmed by the amount of poverty I saw and the way of life that people lived here. And so after we went back to the United States, I was doing some volunteering, and Argo had stayed here for 4 months, and I decided to come back and spend a month here and go back to the States when he returned. And while I was here, I really got a close look at the way people had to live. Electricity not being consistent, sometimes out for 3 days at a time. People were living on 4.5 gallons of water per day. So at that time, I kind of made a decision that I wanted to do something about it. So when we returned to the States and they did an interview, I mentioned in the interview that I was hoping that I would be able to start a nonprofit. And a local attorney in Dubuque saw that article, and he called me up and said he would be willing to do the paperwork to start a nonprofit. We filed the paperwork, and in August of 2011, we got the official paperwork that we were what we call a 501c3, which is a tax-exempt nonprofit. So initially, we talked about trying to build a preschool and kindergarten here. and the village government would not provide us with any land. So we kind of dropped that and decided that with people living on 4.5 gallons of water a day, we needed to do something about water. And we had walked out to the spring that was providing the water, and they told us that because they'd run out of money, they weren't able to capture all the water. So at that time, we kind of made a commitment that if we could raise the money, we would build a second foundation at the spring to capture all the water. And we estimated that that was going to cost about $30,000. So we had several meetings, we had fundraising, and the most we could really raise was about $8,000. And so I called up a man in Dubuque that was kind of a personal friend, and I told him what our situation was, and he said, if you can raise $6,000, I will match it. And there was a farmer that Joe Wagner knew between Monticello, Iowa and Anamosa that said he originally had told us he was going to give us $20,000, but because of the way the economy was at that time, he had committed $10,000 to helping school lunches. So we raised $6,000. Jeff Strines gave us $6,000, and Richard gave us $10,000. All of a sudden we had $30,000, and we could go ahead with the project. So in 2014, the first spring started flowing. The second foundation at the first spring started flowing in, and that doubled the amount of water that people were able to have at their disposal from about 4.5 to 9. And so we felt pretty good about that. And then from there, farmers started letting the village government know that there were more springs out in the rural area. So in 2016, we developed our second spring, and that was a major increase, and to the point where Homacho was now out of the poverty threshold for the amount of water that was available to them.
So I made my first trip to Ethiopia with the organization back in 2018, and that's when we started working on we're still working on some water projects, and then also we're surveying a number of schools to go out and pour concrete floors in the school rooms. So we were actually went out and visited Fule School, and they welcomed us with open arms. Don had visited that school previously, and when we arrived there, they knew that we were coming, and the students all came out and really kind of welcomed him with open arms, and us as well, because they knew that we were going to be bringing concrete floors to their schools. And that's probably, to this day, that is probably one of my favorite things to do while I'm in country, is to actually visit the schools and visit with the children as we go around the schools and kind of survey what we need to do to put concrete floors there. We just visited a school yesterday called Homacho. That will be one of the most recent schools that we'll be actually putting floors in, and we'll be putting 16 floors in there total. 8 of them are going to be patches, 8 of them are actually going to be over dirt floors. So very excited to get that project up and running as well.
So since that time, we have developed a third spring, and now we're in the process of trying to complete a fourth spring that brings the water directly to Homacho. We did develop kind of a half a spring which sits below Homacho, and that was not intended for Homacho but for the village of Caseta. And there is a water station and a laundry station there. So even though we weren't able to take water all the way to Caseta, it did provide water for people in the laundry station out in that area. In addition to that, through ARCO, we learned that there were many schools in the area that did not have concrete floors. They were going to school in dirt floors, which subjected them to parasites. It meant that every Friday they would take all the desks out, and students would rotate being assigned to bring cow manure, and they would spread cow manure over the dirt floors every Friday. So we started sending out a newsletter and telling people not only about the water projects, but about the conditions that existed in the schools.
So also, on my first trip in 2018, we toured the hospital in Hosanna. I had worked in healthcare at the time. I had worked in healthcare for about 20 years, and I was just curious to see what healthcare looked like here in Ethiopia. So I asked, and we were able to walk right into the hospital in Hosanna to get a tour. And the CEO was very gracious in walking us around and showing us the various rooms that we had there, the various rooms that they had, and the services that they provide to people throughout the area. I was really, really surprised to learn how busy this hospital is.
Besides the dirt floors, many of the schools had either no blackboards or blackboards that were large sections missing from them. And so when we did that, when we committed to doing the concrete floors, we also committed to doing blackboards for the rooms that needed blackboards too. So over the course of probably the last 7 or 8 years, we've completed 20 schools in completion, with about 160 concrete floors put in those schools and blackboards, and I think we probably affected about 16,000 students in the process of putting those concrete floors in. So that's a major accomplishment, not only for the students for education, but also for their health. And so, speaking of health, one of our board members, Matt Doffenbaugh, and Matt is a board member, contacted the Hospital Sisters Mission Outreach in Springfield, Illinois, and we arranged for them to send a shipment of medical equipment to the nearest hospital to Homacho, where people go that cannot get the treatment they need in the village. And that's in the city of Hosanna, Ethiopia, about 20 miles away from Homacho. And so that shipment was completed, I believe, in 2020. 2020. It took longer than we expected, and we paid about $25,000 for that shipment, but it provided about $130,000 worth of medical equipment to the hospital in Hosanna. We then contacted them a second time because we wanted to do something to help the hospital and clinic in the village. And so we got a wish list from the hospital in Homacho, and we gathered as many things as we could. The first shipment contained about 15 hospital beds, and I believe all of those beds came from a small town not too far from Dubuque, Iowa, where we're headquartered. And when we came in 2019-20, we saw evidence of those beds. And we arranged for the second shipment. That shipment included hospital beds too, and as much of the equipment as we could possibly round up and be provided for by the Mission Outreach in Springfield, Illinois. We took down 20 laptop computers for the high school for a computer literacy class, and we took down 3 washer-dryer combinations, one for the hospital in the village, and the other 2 for Argo Remo, in hopes of starting a laundry facility here in Homacho. Besides that, we have provided vitamins for the clinic because for whatever reason they cannot get vitamin A, and lack of vitamin A is a leading cause of childhood blindness in the world. So on 2 different occasions we have provided vitamin A to the clinic here in Homacho. The first time we kind of split them between the hospital in Hosanna and the clinic hospital here in Homacho. We have provided baby blankets for the hospital here because they deliver somewhere, the clinic hospital delivers about 90 babies a month, and another 60 babies are delivered at home by midwives in the area. So we're here in 2023 now. The second shipment has been in the port of Dubuque. Unfortunately, the company that was supposed to bring it to Hosanna and then to Homacho went out of business, and so we had to, the hospital sisters contracted with another one, and we're hoping that that shipment will be delivered soon to Hosanna and then on to Homacho here. But about 90% of the equipment on that particular shipment will come here to the village of Homacho.
The hospital was probably what you would expect for a country like Ethiopia. Not quite to the standards of the United States, but definitely we're delivering healthcare to the best of their ability. What we saw was, just an organization that didn't have what they needed. In fact, we were walking around and saw a new building that was going up, and it was the emergency room. The CEO explained to us that they had enough money to go ahead and finish the project, but they didn't have enough money then to buy furniture or buy beds or buy any of the equipment that needs to go into the building. So I had worked for an organization called Hospital Sisters Health System previously in my career, and they have an operation called Mission Outreach. And what they do is they actually take all the extra hospital equipment from their hospitals throughout their states and package them and then send them off to their ministries in Tanzania and Haiti. Well, they also have organizations like Friends of Homacho, and we sent the first shipment over in 2020. That shipment also included 15 beds from Mercy One in Dyersville, Iowa, which were donated by Mercy One, and they're now in use in the hospital in Hosanna as we speak.
We have, Friends of Homacho has, throughout the village, built there's now about 15 water stations throughout the village. So everyone in the village has relative easy access to a water station. Besides that, and this idea came from women, we have built 4 laundry stations for women to go to do their laundry rather than having to do their laundry basically on the ground. So that has been a large benefit also. And Friends of Homacho has added 2 water tanks to the village since we came here. Very early on, we built a water tank that was necessary to hold the increased water. And then about 2 years ago, Friends of Homacho built a second water tank when we developed the 3rd spring that brings water directly into the village. So we have really increased the number of families that have water on their property. Right now, when we first started, right now there are about 2,500 families that have water on their property. Initially, when we first came here and asked, there were about 300 families. So we have provided more than 8 times the number of families that have water on their property to the families that have water on their property today. And we have been told there's a waiting list of possibly 4,000 to 5,000 families who would still like to have water on their property if they can determine there is enough water to provide. Because of the water, the village is transforming. As you come into the village, Argo's brother Tassima has built a 2-story building, and the bottom floor houses 2 banks, and the top floor houses his cafe that he that he provides a service of a variety of drinks. There's a little photo shop up there, and there's another store, a 3rd store on the top floor, and there's actually a little video store on the bottom floor too. And then his brother Argo, who really is the one who came to the United States that I got to know, he was given some property by the village government, and he has built a car wash that has a lot of concrete, 2 stalls to wash cars, trucks, and a fairly large area to wash motorcycles. He has a shower room that has 12 showers in it. He has a barbershop room. He has a little convenience store that sells cosmetics and other things that are there. That store also has a computer, a printer, and a copy machine. And so there's a lot of concrete there. As you go through the village now, you see new stores going up made out of concrete. So because of the amount of water, the village is transforming. As we sit here right now, I'm looking at a concrete wall that Argo's father has built in front of his compound that is probably close to 10 feet high and maybe 12 inches thick. So because of the water that has been brought here, the village is being transformed with more buildings, and because of the amount of water that has been brought into this village has been now deemed to be an administrative district. And because of that, that means they are provided with more federal money, more money coming into this village because of the amount of water that is available in the village. So we just see before our eyes all the concrete that is being poured on personal properties, on business properties, all over the village.
So there are a number of different projects that Friends of Homacho is working on here in the village today. We're working on developing our 5th spring. We also just surveyed a school yesterday so that we could provide 16 concrete floors in that school as well, in addition to the already 15 other schools that we've provided concrete floors in as well. We invite you to be a part of our journey and to donate if you feel that you're willing to, or to support our projects. You can donate at friendsofhomacho.org on our website, and also find more.